Hey guys, John here. So in today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about bass, and the first thing I want to bring up is called layering, and I'm sure we hear this all the time, right? Let's layer this bass, let's layer these pads, let's layer this lead, layering and layering. What the hell does that actually mean? So basically, I guess think of this like a cake, right? We have one cake, and we have lots of different layers that make up that one cake. So we're using lots of different things to make one cohesive whole thing. And I think the best way to demonstrate this for this sound, I guess, or for this bass, is to kind of show two different layers and see how these work as one cohesive whole. So before we get more into this video, let's take a listen to this bass and see what it sounds like. Okay, so we have a nice low end, we have some nice crispy highs, and it kind of works well with the drums in the background, right? So for now, let's mute the drums and let's kind of take a look just at this bass, right? So with these two layers going on, it sounds something like this. Okay, so now we get a concept. Now, if you listen to the first layer, is the first oscillator, is just this. And then the second one is that. Now, with bass, this is very important. So the first one over here, if you take a look, this one is literally just one saw wave and it's down an octave, and we're doing some filter modulation. Now, the main important thing about the low end for this bass is going to be that it's mono. It's right in the center because we want our kick to be mono, we want our bass to be mono, and really a lot of the low end stuff we want to be mono, maybe also stuff like the snare could be mono or vocals, things like that. So we want to keep things kind of in the center so the speakers have the equal amount of energy and it's not kind of getting washy and kind of boomy and kind of unclear. We want a defined sound. So that's one of the main things. Keep the low end mono and it's going to be a lot nicer, I guess. It's going to work better. So if you kind of look here on this first oscillator, this kind of brings me to the next thing, right? So this first oscillator, the only reason this guy is alive right now is to hold down the low end, keep it mono, and then now we need to kind of go through this process. So if we look at this one is going out the first effects chain, which is this stack right here. Now we have this EQ, and if we open this up, let's actually kind of mute this guy and mute the second oscillator. So this is the only zone that this oscillator has to live in, just this. So here I'm giving a little bump of the low end where I feel like it's nice for this bass, and I'm actually taking a lot of the highs, even though there's not really that many highs to begin with because we're filtering a lot of stuff. I also make sure it's not in there in the EQ as well, so it's really very contained in this general area down here. And then the next thing, we go to a compressor, and generally I kind of like doing 8:1 ratio for that. I think it kind of works, especially with bass. And also did some boosting down over here. Now we can compress it how we like, but make sure that the low end is really nice and compressed, so there's not really too many dynamics there. And then we're going to see this here. We're going to see root-averb. We're going to see some reverb. Like, whoa, John, whoa, you're breaking all the rules now. So conventionally speaking, you don't want to put reverb on low-end signals. It's kind of all what's been ingrained in us for a long time. But I think a lot of those people who have said that haven't really dipped their fingers in any types of EDM music at all. EDM music, that's kind of like PIN number, right? Electronic dance music, PIN number, personal identification number. Anyway, we're getting off topic here. So generally they say, okay, don't put reverb on a bass. And yeah, I can see why you don't want to. But in certain genres and certain styles, it's kind of cool to do that. But there's a big caveat for this one. And I kind of first thought the word caveat was cave eat. It's kind of weird. But anyway, so we have a little bit of reverb here. And if we look at the decay, this is such a tiny amount. The mix is only 12% here, 12.22. And there's a lot of high end being cut out of that just in case that there's any signal in there. And the whole reason for this bass or this reverb to be on this low end bass is to kind of put it in a little bit of a room. So if you were to turn this off here, okay, we got that sound now with a little reverb. Now, this is so subtle. It's one of those tiny little things, but I think at the overall end product, it can sound cool. Now, if you're like, I don't even want to deal with low end on a reverb, I don't like it, you don't have to put it there, but you're going to notice in different styles of music that sometimes you're going to listen to the bass, you're going to be like, I think there's actually reverb on there. So if you do use reverb on the low end, make sure you're really bringing down that decay and then making it a little bit in the mix. It shouldn't be like we're adding reverb to things, right? Even though that's a delay. It should be a subtle, tasteful effect, okay? So that's kind of the first concept here. Now, before we go to the second one, I do want to share with you that this output of this first stack is going to FX3, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. Okay, so we've covered the first one for the most part as far as the effects go. The filter is they're getting filtered differently. So this first one is going to this Nexus Low Pass 24, which I really like this filter in Avenger, and we're kind of bringing the cutoff down to what 100 hertz ish, right? Nothing too crazy, giving it a little bit of envelope modulation, and they're both going to an ARP, which is just playing 16th notes, nothing too crazy there. Okay, so for the second stack is going to be this, right? And it's going to be this oscillator. So if we solo this up and listen to it. Okay, we have that. So this one is going to the second filter, which is this guy, and we're using the Nexus Low Pass 12, and we're kind of keeping it around 6.5K, right? And you can put these on macros later on. I didn't want to because I think this is kind of beyond the scope of the video. But anyway, we have a little bit of resonance and a little bit of envelope modulation, and again, going to this ARP down here. So far, so good. Now, if you look at this stack, the first thing that it hits is going to be the EQ. And if we open this up, we're shaving a lot of low end off here, right? So we're cutting at about 125.6 hertz because we don't really need any of this down here because that's what the first oscillator's for. And then here I kind of move some of these notes to kind of find a nice sweet spot for that sizzly, high-endy kind of stuff. And we have a pretty cool sound, right? Now, this oscillator is also going to be on full unison, and we have 4 voices, and these are going to be kind of detuned as well because we're adding the voices and we're kind of spreading things around. So the low end is going to be mono, but this oscillator is going to be the higher end stuff, so which we can spread it out the stereo field, so it works as a cohesive, big, huge bass. So next it goes to a chorus. So if we're going to turn these off for now, so this is what it sounds like without any effects. Kind of a basic unison saw wave, nothing too insane. Then we put the EQ on here, thin it out, make it a little bit sparkly in the top, and then we hit it with a chorus. Which, God, I love chorus. It sounds so nice. And then we can hit it with a delay. So now is the spot where we can take this extra layer and really make it sparkly, make it shine, put these delays on it, throw those delays around the stereo field, give it some nice reverb and stuff like that. This is kind of where you'd want to do that. So we turn on the delay. If you look at this guy, we're doing a ping pong. I kind of brought the width down just a little bit. We're going to be 1/8, and then narrowed down the EQ or the filter for the delays. Feedback's to 50, which I believe is default, and then our mix is 37.22% in the mix. So that's kind of cool there. And then at the very end, we're going to have some reverb. And this one, the decay is much longer than that first one. If you look at this guy here, so 3.89 for that decay. And here we can increase the decay a little bit more. And then the mix is going to be 30 for this guy. And you can always spend some time and really tweak the reverbs of the high-end stuff or the different layers, and that's totally fine. Okay, so now we have that in the back. So remember, the first effects module here goes down and goes output to effects 3, and the second one also goes to effects 3. So what's happening here? So we go to effects 3, and now we're squashing these two together. We're kind of gluing these two pieces together because we both polished them and made them nice how we like them, and we're squishing them together. They're going to be one thing now, you know, like the Now Kiss thing. They're going to be friends, whether they want to or not. So that basically is a 4:1 ratio and nothing too crazy, giving a little bit more output gain at 1.74 deeps, which, yeah. And after this, we're going to a mini chain, which is a really cool module in Avenger, which is basically just side chaining. And here we're doing it to 1/4, so a quarter note, so we get that pumping effect. All right, so we turn this off. It's kind of just doing its thing. So this might sound a little bit weird if there's no drums in it. And also the first oscillator is doing the same thing as well. Right, if we took this off, just kind of like a static bass, there's no real motion or rhythm to it. So a little bit of this can be tasteful. I kind of tightened up this curve a little bit and dropped down this mix here by like 62.22%. And now we have both of these. So if we just muted the drums for now and just listen to both of these basses together, or both of these sounds that make a bass, they kind of start working together, and then we add the drums on top of that. And then at the very end, there's I did add a compressor in the beginning. I was like, maybe we can compress them again, but I was like, it's fine. So I kind of removed it here. But I do want you to be aware, if you are in Avenger, you can then process more of these together or use this effects rack or whatever you want to do. It's your patch, right? So the last thing I think we should talk about before we wrap this up here is basically, now that we have the low end kind of solid and holding down its fort, and then the second oscillator is kind of doing its own thing. So this one's not too, I guess, creative in the sense that we have 4 voices of unison. We're detuning a little bit of things there. And that's kind of about it. But we can always spice things up a little bit. So if we have this soloed here, we can maybe do some sync things. Maybe put that on a macro. That might be kind of cool. Or add some interesting effects. You know, maybe change stuff down here, or maybe add some more effects down to the FX2 stack and make it kind of really weird. Maybe like a bit rate reduction or something like that. So if you bring these down a little bit, maybe do this after the reverb and before the chorus. So if we did something like bit byte or something like that, maybe goes with some of these presets. See, that one's kind of cool, this Art of Noise one. And without it, and just a clean saw wave. Now adding these all together, what would that sound like? Let's choose another one. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Let's try that one. That actually sounds pretty cool. So let's see what this sounds like in the mix. So with that, I would probably like mix this level a little bit differently. So even just something kind of like that. So that's the kind of whole point. So we have the low end and it's kind of doing its own thing. It's holding down the fort. It's being our bass. It's, you know, everyone's dancing to it. But then we have the top end, and this is kind of where we can go creative and really kind of be artistic, right? Not really so like artsy fartsy artistic. Oh my God, artistic. We can really make it however we want it to be. So at the end of the day, we can have our low end stuff, and then the second oscillator, we can really do whatever we want with it. We can pan things different ways, and that's kind of the spot where I feel like we can really be creative and really make our mark on what this bass should sound like. Now, at the end of the day, this is only a low end and a kind of a mid-high end sound. Now you can add more layers. So if you're an Avenger as well, you can go ahead and pop in another oscillator and use another effect stack and basically have 3 different layers. You can have your low end layer, maybe like your mid layer, and then a really, really high end layer. So something like that. But the whole point is that these 3, 2, 4, whatever how many layers you have should work together as one whole piece for the greater good, I suppose, right? Each piece kind of works together because by themselves, they're really not that important, but together they make some cool bass. So yeah, that's the whole point of this video. Hopefully this makes your basses a little bit better, because I'm sometimes guilty of this as well, where I'll have a bass and I'll put like some stereo effect on it or put like a chorus on the whole low end thing. And yeah, it can sound really cool. But sometimes if you play them on different speakers or bigger speakers or something like that, you can get some phase problems, and it's not really going to be that efficient as if you did something kind of like this where the low end's mono and the top end is sparkly, wide, whatever. You do whatever it is you want to do with it. But yeah, thought that would help you guys out. I figured this out way later in my life than I should have. So if you already know this, then that's great. But if you don't, try it out. You're going to be surprised at some cool results that you get. So yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.